think I'm talking about breaking the law? No, I'm just trying to figure out how far you want to bend without breaking the law. In other words, don't risk an IRS audit. I don't care about an audit, they just better not win. Sad news. Gene Hackman and his wife, Betsy Arakawa, were found dead at their home in Santa Fe, New Mexico. Hackman was once a Hollywood star but chose to disappear from the public eye. Police said there were no signs of foul play. But the question still stands. What really happened? Gene Hackman wasn't just a two-time Academy Award winner. He had a history full of hidden struggles. He was once jailed for theft and made fun of as someone who had no chance of making it. He was also known for being confrontational and never afraid to use his fists to settle a score. He did it for something much bigger. Is this really the end of Gene's story or just another mystery? Hackman. Let's find out. When Gene Hackman decided to follow his acting dream, he wasn't just betting on his career. He was also sacrificing the most important things in his life and making mistakes that were almost certain to happen. In 1956, Hackman married Faye Malles, the woman he had thought would be his rock as he tried to find his place in the movie business. At the time, Hackman was still an unknown actor who was doing odd jobs to make ends meet. In the early years of their marriage, they lived a simple life. Happily ever after, Faye believed in her husband even though others said he would never make it. They built a house and had 3 kids, Christopher Allen, Elizabeth Jean, and Leslie Ann. But, as Hollywood often says, love and success don't. Hackman's career took off in the late 1960s with Bonnie and Clyde. And by the 1970s, he was one of the biggest stars in the business, with hits like The French Connection, 1971, and The Poseidon Adventure, 1972. Hackman's work took over his family life. He went from one movie to the next, traveling from city to city. Faye and the kids slowly became strangers in his life. The calls home became less and less frequent, and his attendance at family dinners became a rare treat. In an interview with the New York Times in 1989, Hackman admitted that as an actor you become very selfish because you spend your whole life wanting to be seen. It's hard to say no when you're successful and look good. For a poor kid like me, the money, fame, and the temptations were all too much. Faye Malty waited patiently, but in the end, the distance between them had grown into an unbridgeable chasm. After 30 years of marriage, they got divorced in 1986. Hackman's first marriage ended quietly, with no fights or legal battles, just the regret of a man who realized too late what he had lost. In an interview with GQ, when asked what advice he had for his son, Hackman bitterly said, "I was away for too long. I don't have any advice to give." Whether this was because of bad decisions or the constant pressure to prove oneself, sacrificing family happiness for success came at an unbearable cost. And Hackman learned that lesson the hard way. After divorcing Faye Maltz in 1986, he continued his career taking on major roles and remaining one of Hollywood's top actors. But for years he lived alone until he met Betsy Arakawa, a woman who would change his life. Betsy was 32 years old at the time. Betsy was younger than Hackman and worked at a gym. They met in the late 1980s and started dating naturally. Betsy introduced Hackman to a piece of music he had never heard before. In 1991, Hackman and Betsy got married. This time, he didn't want his career to get in the way of his family life, so they chose to live a quiet life away from Hollywood and the media before finding peace. Unfortunately, G. Hackman had to go through many tragedies that changed his life, and he has many memories that will stay with him forever. Anawa Elizabeth Hackman's death in a house fire in 1962 was one of the worst shocks of his life. Reports say she had been drinking a lot and fell asleep with a lit cigarette in her hand, and the house quickly caught on fire. For Hackman, it wasn't just the loss of a loved one, it was an unbearable regret. His mother had been the only person who really believed he could become an actor, but by the time he started making a name for himself on screen, she was no longer interested. Due to unresolved financial issues, Hackman had more questions than answers. To escape his grief, Hackman buried himself in work, taking on role after role as a way to dull the pain. In a later interview, he admitted that he had put all of his energy into acting because he didn't want to drown in sadness. During this time, he played some of the most important roles of his career, including those in Under Fire, 1983, Hoopers, 1986, and Mississippi Burning, 1988, films that cemented his place as one of Hollywood's biggest stars. Elite. But Hackman didn't just deal with emotional losses. He also faced danger in real life. One of the most memorable events happened in 2001 when he got into a street brawl in Hollywood. While driving, Hackman accidentally hit another car, and two young men got out of their car and were visibly angry. Instead of staying calm, they insulted Hackman, not realizing that they were provoking a former Marine at 71 years old. Hackman wasn't one to be intimidated, so, without exchanging words, he threw the first punch. The three of them lunged at each other, causing chaos in the middle of the street. Police quickly arrived to break up the fight, but no one was arrested. The incident showed that Hackman had not lost his fighting spirit, even though he had stopped playing action-packed roles. However, Hackman may have come closest to death in 2012 when he was hit by a truck while cycling without a helmet on a Florida road. News of the accident quickly spread, making fans worry that he might have been seriously hurt. Hackman survived, but only barely. He was released from the hospital the same day, and people who knew him well said that he never stopped cycling even though he was old, but from that day on, he never went outside without a helmet. Fast forward to 2004, after finishing the comedy Welcome to Mooseport, Gene Hackman suddenly quit Hollywood. There was no official announcement, farewell press conference, or grand send-off film like other legends. He just disappeared from the screen. At the time, many people thought Hackman was just taking a break, but that was the last time he would be in a commercial film. This caused a lot of people to wonder why an actor who was still at the top of his game and able to command the screen would suddenly disappear. Was it because of the failure of Welcome to Mooseport, which made only $14 million, 0 cents on a $30 million, 0 cents budget? Or was it because he no longer found scripts interesting enough? Or was he just tired of all the excitement and chaos in Hollywood? The real reason was much more complicated than that. Hackman had begun to realize that his health wasn't what it used to be. In 1990, he was rushed to the hospital with a severe arterial blockage. There, doctors found that his heart condition was critical and performed an angioplasty to save his life. If he had arrived at the hospital just a few hours later, he might not have survived. After the surgery, Hackman had to make changes to his lifestyle, but he kept acting for over a decade. By the early 2000s, his health problems came back and he started feeling tired while filming. The long hours, intense scenes, and constant travel were all too much for Hackman. In an interview with Empire magazine, he said that he no longer had the energy to keep acting. He also said that his doctors had told him to avoid unnecessary stress like the demands of a film career. Hackman said that if he couldn't give something his all, he would rather not do it at all. But Hackman had never liked Hollywood's noise and showiness for health reasons alone. Not everyone could pull off Gene Hackman's style, but he was also the personification of strength and determination. He went from being doubted and laughed at as a child to becoming one of Hollywood's biggest stars. Hackman proved that success isn't luck, but hard work and believing in yourself. While many Hollywood stars chased the spotlight, Hackman chose to live a quiet life with his wife in Santa Fe, far from the celebrity world. His legacy isn't just in his famous roles like Poe Doyle or Lex Luthor, but also in the way he lived. He was a man who never gave in to the limits that others tried to put on him, and even though the world was shocked when he and Betsy died, Gene Hackman's performance, life story, and book, The Man Behind the Legend, will always be remembered by his fans. What about you? How do you remember Gene Hackman, through his famous roles or his unforgettable quotes? or just the way he lived his life on his own terms. If you like Gene Hackman, leave a comment with R.I.P. Gene Hackman to help us honor a true Hollywood legend, a man who made the business respect and love him. For more on Gene Hackman's life and career, watch the video on your screen right now and subscribe to our channel so you never miss out on the untold stories of the legends you love.